problem that we need to address too. And this is bipartisan. And Senator Siplin out of Orlando talking about mechanisms in the process. It took 4 years for ethics or elections law violation to finally be ruled on by Senator Siplin out of Orlando just in the last week. And why does it take 4 years to review an elections violation complaint? Why does it take so much time to review these ethics complaints? We think if we start by giving the professionals the ability to begin the process, to begin the investigation, that will help right on the front. Because now they're not waiting, judging to see if a complaint from a citizen that just clipped the article in the paper and sent it in, they're not waiting to see, trying to decide if it has enough legal quality as a document to be considered. So let the professionals begin the investigations would be the greatest thing we could do, the greatest mechanism to improve the process. Because citizens have only filed, less than 200 ethics complaints last year. The numbers are dwindling, but we need ethics law enforcement officers to do these investigations because we know based on the convictions, just the federal convictions, there are bigger problems and more problems. I think they're probably more at the state and local government level if we give the professionals the ability to investigate.
I applaud you lofty goals, but what incentives do our legislators have? They are owned by corporate lobbyists. They know we don't know what's going on as voters. We're so disengaged. So they have no incentive because they're going to be responsible for legislating disclosure reform. So where's the incentive for them to do that?
Well, rooms like this give me hope. The fact that you have elected officials in the room and we're all here talking about it and saying we care about it. I think the more they hear about these issues from me on the campaign trail before they get there, the better. I'm starting to hear more candidates actually run on the need for ethics reform. You have Senator Lee, who announced he's running for the Senate again. He was the last major legislative champion who achieved a significant ethics reform, passed it. Tampa Bay's been pretty good. Senator Sebesta was the legislator who got the ability for the Ethics Commission to begin its own investigations all the way to the floor of the Senate before they killed it. So in Tampa Bay, this is where we could actually drive the ethics reform discussion. You have people running this year that care about the issue. So we've got to catch them now. By the time they get to Tallahassee, it's too late. But you're right. The incentive's not there for them to hurt their own pocketbooks. So let's start with disclosure. Let's just say, all right, come on. Tell us if you have a conflict before the vote, not 15 days after the vote. I can't see any legislator saying that on the record that they don't think that's a good idea. I think maybe we've just tried to do a little too much. Senator Dockery's been an awesome champion for ethics reform, but maybe they've tried to hit the pocketbooks too hard. But let's start with disclosure before we say you can't vote on anything, because we have to be careful there too. You don't want your House district or your Senate district to not have a representative on a vote. If these folks in Tallahassee had to abstain from every vote where they had a conflict, they'd all have to go home. But disclosure is a good first step, and it's harder for them to argue against disclosure, and I think that's where we start. That's where there's movement. Governor Scott created Project Sunburst. Florida has a right to know. CFO Sync began what's now Transparency Florida that CFO Atwater is running. They're putting more information and baby steps online. Let's keep pushing that in that direction because they're doing it and it's happening. And it's happening well at the local government level as well. But it might be long term that we just have to have the strategy of let's get every city and county in Florida operating at a higher level of integrity and openness and ethics. And by the time those local officials run for office in Tallahassee or Washington, they get it. That might be the best strategy to do it.
Thank you, Rick. I have an observation, a suggestion, and a question. Our observation is you look terrific in that suit.
Thank you. What are you running for? I love that raised cap, too.
I want to tell you that the thing that actually looks best on you is your sense of integrity. And that you have devoted your life to that cause. It's got to make your parents in this audience and everybody else really proud. I happen to know personally Demosthenes the 14th, and the one honest man that he's found in Florida was a gator wrestler in the Everglades. should forget. And if Sisyphus would just take that rock of integrity, and as he pushes it to the mountain, and it starts to roll back, he would make it so you don't have to do that anymore. He would push it for us. I think your job might be easier. The question is, aren't we looking at the fact that corruption in Florida is the status quo, and you're one of the people trying to change that? Would that be true, sir?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. I guess that's a follow-up to Bill's question here.
Yeah.
It seems like just a gigantic task to undertake, but you have the faith that we can do it?
I do, because I see it happening at the local level. There are examples in our state today, in Palm Beach County and Jacksonville, where they've already done it. Tallahassee's probably going to be the next one to have a local ethics code. So it might have to be ground up, grassroots. I mean, the legislature might ignore us for a while, but we're going to keep trying. We're meeting with the governor. And,
Lead on.
All right.
Thank you. Nancy, and then Nancy.
Now, I wonder if it would be useful to share with us some of the content of the ethics code in Palm Beach County and Jacksonville. You know, because it's hard for me to know what you're talking about.
Sure. And maybe that's something our next report we'll put online, all those codes, because in Palm Beach County they won a National Association of Counties award for that. It basically just governs how public officials conduct the public's business. It tells us it sets the bar for their conduct in office. That suggests that abuse of power and conflicts of interest and things like that are practices that they need to avoid. And one thing our state ethics code doesn't include that concerns me is related to the private prison contractor. As we privatize more of government, as more money is going to nonprofits and for-profit companies, the ethics code doesn't follow the state ethics code. So I think we need to see our state ethics code improved. And as you look at potentially local ethics codes, let's make sure vendors who spend our money are included in there. So the ethics code is what is looked to as the Ethics Commission considers complaints. You see a number of issues that have been coming up before it governs conflicts of interest, the rules and regs that are there today. It governs abuse of power, related issues. Voting conflicts is probably the most frequently examined area of the ethics code, and that comes before the State Ethics Commission quite a bit. Is that covered, or going to dig a little deeper?
I'd like to know a little more.
Right, it's actually a pretty dry document, but we can make it available. But I think one of the things that we'll do as the League of Women Voters as a follow-up event is definitely bring Dan back, but also invite Carla Miller, who has been working, really spearheading the effort to create an ethics commission in Jacksonville. And that way we get to hear from some of the people who've been on the front lines, that could speak to those details and that heavy lifting.
So something they did in Palm Beach County is they had higher penalties. If you break those ethics codes, they put those in place. I thought that was kind of... Right now, the maximum fine you might get based on the state ethics code is about a $10,000, sometimes a slap on the wrist. I mean, you had a former Representative Frank Peterman here from St. Petersburg who was flying up to Tallahassee and back to St. Pete, spending our money on all those trips. And it took years, and they finally decided to give him a slap on the wrist fine for spending a whole lot, getting a whole lot more of our tax dollars. It was a good deal for him. I mean, that was, I guess the Orbitz or Expedia special for public officials using our tax dollars for their private travel.
Okay, so we'll take 3 more questions. You, ma'am, then Leonard, and then Diane.
Sam, you mentioned early on that you saw the judicial record on ethics as being a job killer in Florida, but I wonder if Integrity Florida has any plans to look at those counties that you mentioned, like Jacksonville and Palm Beach County, that have strong ethics legislation in place now, and how they compare to other places in Florida in terms of job growth or attracting corporate headquarters or businesses to those communities.
That's